Welcome to the Cannabis Trade Association's professional webinar series. We're excited to delve into another insightful session designed for cannabis professionals in the industry. Our webinars aim to educate, inform, and foster a community of like-minded individuals dedicated to the responsible and innovative growth in our sector. Without further ado, let's welcome our guest speaker, Christopher Budd from Isolocity, who will be presenting on the important considerations for a successful GMP certification in cannabis. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll find this session both informative and inspiring.
My name is Chris Budd. I'm the subject matter expert here at Isolocity, and Isolocity is a quality management software that's designed to help automate ISO and GMP compliance. We've already talked a little bit about this already, who I am, and that's what I look like when I'm really happy. Okay, so today's agenda, what we're going to be discussing today is why do we want to certify to ISO or GMP? What do we need to do to get certified? How do you get ready for certification? Some of the challenges and different solutions out there to overcome those challenges. And then, of course, we'll go through some key takeaways and then have a general Q&A if questions come up during this session. So why certify? So certification acts as a couple of different foundations for your business. Firstly, it helps build trust with your customers and industry operators. Knowing that you have a third-party certification ensures confidence in your product and in your process that has been reviewed by an independent party who's taken objective evidence to demonstrate that you're managing your compliance accordingly. So it helps build trust with your customers. Furthermore, there are benefits to implementing a quality management system as well. And that comes in the fact that it's going to help you produce more consistent and better product, because you're going to now be able to have the systems in place to capture the data, to act on that data, to provide business intelligence, to make decisions to improve your business. Furthermore, improved customer retention and improved acquisition of customers as well. You build better product, you have a good system in place, you retain customers, and customers will then come to you because they've heard good things, hopefully, about your product and your company. Also, and more importantly, and probably the most important part of this, is reducing the compliance risks for your business and consumer risk. So when you're building more consistent products that are meeting high quality standards, you put your customer less at risk for consuming a product that's contaminated or built or processed incorrectly. But on top of that too, from a compliance risk perspective, if you have something that is standardized and automated and repeatable within your processes, the compliance risks to your business are then mitigated because you have something that you're auditing consistently and monitoring to ensure that you're following. So what do we need to do to get certified? Well, first off, you need to understand the requirements in which you are being audited against. So this could be GMP, this could be ISO. And what you would like to do is then get a checklist of that standard. So then you know essentially what it's asking you to achieve and then you can start strategizing how you're going to achieve that. While you're doing this, you also want to ensure that you comply with all federal, state, and local regulations and laws, because a part of GMP and ISO, and especially ISO, it does take into consideration local regulations as well. And what I mean by that, these could be occupational health and safety regulations, these could be environmental regulations, and this is all part of your quality standard, because how you dispose of your waste, how you treat your workforce is all part of your management system that helps you get certified for ISO or GMP. And now we're going to start getting a bit of the nuts and bolts as well. So part of the process of getting certified is that you need a reliable document control process or software. And this is important because there's a lot of objective evidence that is required for these certifications to be successful. And then finally, you need to have management commitment. And with management commitment, this is going to allow you to take the necessary training on the standard, allow you to get the resources applied in the business to ensure that you can be successful at meeting the standard and also improving upon your compliance over time. Okay, so how do we get ready for certification? So there's a couple of key steps here that need to take place. And these are high level, but it really gives you the idea of what you really need to consider and what you really need to think about when you're going down this process. So, for example, the first step would be gap analysis. And the gap analysis is where you would go through that checklist that we mentioned on that previous slide and see where you're currently at. And based on the findings in that gap analysis, you can then start to devise a strategy and a plan of how you're going to achieve that and bridge those gaps and start collecting that objective evidence to demonstrate your compliance. Part of a quality management system, the backbone of a quality management system, is to develop that manual, that quality manual and SOPs. So what a quality manual and SOPs are, SOPs stand for Standard Operating Procedures. What they are is the guideline or the rules that you want to apply within your individual business, tailored to your business, to ensure that it's helping you meet business objectives, but on top of that, you're following the compliance scheme set out in GMP or ISO as well, too. Once these documents have been created, you would then want to implement these documents. And so by implementing these documents, it takes time. It's not something you can do overnight because you need to train your staff on these SOPs and how they need to be followed. You need to train the staff on the new workflows that have been created to capture the objective evidence. So this is a very big part of getting ready for certification, is the implementation of your standard operating procedures and good manufacturing practices. It's also beneficial to have an established management rep, so someone who owns the system. Now, there are certain schools of thought out there that would suggest for large organizations that you would have a dedicated management rep per department, per location, etc. But for a lot of the businesses in the cannabis and hemp industry, for the most part, these are medium-sized businesses, and they are those businesses that are anywhere between 5 to 20, 5 to 100 employees. And if that's the size of business that you're currently operating in, I would recommend only having one management rep. And that allows that individual to own the process and to ensure that the process is being followed, not the person who has to do everything, but the person who's essentially owning that process, managing that process, and ensuring that there's the cross-functional team and the staff that are all participating in the capturing of the objective evidence and the monitoring of the processes you have just implemented with your standard operating procedures and good manufacturing practices. And of course, the collection of the objective evidence is very important, because if you haven't written it down, if you haven't inputted it in some sort of data format, then to an auditor's perspective, it hasn't happened. So the objective evidence is a very important part to establishing certification with ISO and GMP. Now, while you're doing all this training and collecting objective evidence, you want to conduct what we call an internal audit or self-assessment, depending on how you define it. Self-assessment, internal audit, essentially what that is then taking that checklist again from that gap analysis that we mentioned earlier in the presentation, and then going through and seeing how well you have closed the gaps on your initial gap analysis. So that internal audit is supposed to then help prepare you for the final audit or for the certification audit. And the goal during this internal audit process is to have no findings internally. Now, if you do have findings, you would then go through your corrective action loop and fix the problems and then re-audit that process to ensure that you're ready to go. And then finally, auditors like to see a management review. And what a management review is, it's a management meeting that involves a cross-functional group and senior management, senior leadership within the organization, where you're reviewing the key performance indicators and you're reviewing status and the health of the compliance system internally, and then taking action to drive improvement. Because a big part of certification and maintaining certification is not just capturing the objective evidence and demonstrating that you're doing something, but it's also demonstrating the willingness to learn and to improve. And the auditors want to see that. They want to see improvement and action items being driven to drive improvement. So the key steps. So we talked a little bit about how to get ready, what you need to do internally. Now, there's some key steps to get the certification. So obviously, we learned about the standard. We talked a little bit about that already. probably equally important about learning about the standards is getting that application in. Because if you're not submitting an application, no one's going to come in on it. Designating that management rep, as we mentioned, to implement and maintain the standard, understand your gaps, execute that facility-wide gap assessment, as we mentioned, schedule your audit, conduct the audit, receive your audit results from the third party, and then address those nonconformities if you have any. So high level, nice 8-step process here. Just communicating what we've already communicated at the first little part, but then the last bit, getting the audit done, conducting the audit, and getting those results in and addressing those nonconformities to receive your certification. Okay, so some of the challenges that we have seen with our clients, and I have seen in a previous life as an auditor. So one of the challenges that we see with clients who don't have a standardized approach, and hence part of the reason why they come to Isolocity to help them standardize their approach, is that not having a standardized process leads to a lot of uncertainties in how stuff is being conducted internally. So if it's vague, it's sometimes hard to understand these regulations. You do then increase the risk of errors in the implementation and the operational planning. So standardization breeds consistency, breeds consistent results. A lack of facility-wide standardization and record keeping as well, record keeping protocols will lead to wasted time, resources, and increased errors. Now, when I talk about standardization and record keeping, it's how you actually go about implementing and capturing that objective evidence. If it's being done differently in different processes, using different techniques, you're going to have inconsistencies. It's going to create error, and it's going to put your compliance at risk. So these are some of these challenges that you have that you can face without having a standardized approach to capturing your records. And if you're not capturing your records in a standardized approach, you're going to increase the risk of corrective actions and nonconformities during your audit. And so you want to ensure that you have standardized approach to capturing information to reduce errors and to reduce your risk. So the solution to this challenge. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can go about implementing various solutions to help drive standardization. So first off, implementing that 5S methodology for document and tool location as an example. And it will provide you with a reference link at the end of this to some nice 5S reading on what 5S is all about. But essentially, it is creating a standardized process to capturing data and also managing tools or instruments that are being used in processing, and then have an audit circle, having an audit program to come back and check up on how well you've done in maintaining your 5S program. It's going to keep your places clean. There's going to be a standardized approach. Everything has its place. So then you're creating this consistency in how you're managing the operation, but also how you're managing your data. Furthermore, one-piece flow. And we talk about one-piece flow from a production perspective. Everyone usually thinks about one-piece flow in production, but they don't often think about it as a data collection as well, too. So one-piece flow, if you're not familiar with that terminology in a production process, what I would recommend is next time you're sitting down with some of your colleagues to test this theory, one colleague grabs 5 blank pieces of paper, and another colleague grabs 5 envelopes, and you do the same. And for the person who's going to establish the one-piece flow process, they will then take their 5 pieces of paper and individually they'll fold one piece of paper twice and then put it in the envelope. They'll do that again, one piece of paper twice and then put it in the envelope. So they're handling one piece of paper and then putting it in the envelope in one step. The next person is going to conduct it in the batch flow. And what do I mean by that is that they're going to take one piece of paper, fold it. They'll then take another piece of paper and fold it. And they'll do that 3 or more times. Then they'll pick the pile back up and fold each piece of paper again. So they'll fold the first piece of paper for the second fold, second piece of paper for the second fold, et cetera, et cetera. Then they'll pick the pile back up again and put one piece of paper in the envelope. Then they'll take the next piece of paper and put it in an envelope. So that is what we call batch flow. So one-piece flow is a lot more efficient than batch production. And the same is true with data collection. If you are handling data multiple times, the same data multiple times, you're going to introduce errors, you're going to introduce risks, and you're also going to create an inefficient process. Okay. Now, some other solutions to this challenge of standardization is to enact a turtle diagram process approach internal auditing process, and that helps you identify how the main process in production is being supported by the support processes, and that gives you a nice holistic view on how everything is being managed within that particular process. If the training records are up to date, if the documents are up to date, if uh, the measurements are being up to date, so as far as the KPIs, if the equipment's being calibrated. So that process approach, utilizing a turtle diagram for auditing, is also another beneficial approach to ensure that you have a standardized way of managing your compliance. And then finally, increasing locations for data entry in the facility. If you have one area for data entry, then what you're doing is you're introducing waste when individuals have to move and walk and go places to put data into. If you can increase the amount of areas or locations for data input, then this becomes a whole lot more of an efficient process to capture this information as well. So some solutions to the challenge just presented, and we'll get into another common challenge that we see. Okay, so poor operational design. And so this also leads to product release and record keeping to take longer than it should. So not having the right flow set up in your facility. So this can also lead to risks and inefficiencies and introduce compliance concerns. Poor system management that creates double handling of data. We talked a little bit about that already. So you want to have data input availability, and you want to maybe have it automatically done as well too. So rather than taking information from a digital caliper and then having write that onto a piece of paper, or taking that information from a digital caliper and having input into a software, maybe you should just have it inputted automatically. So then you're reducing how you're handling it, when you're handling it, and you're improving the efficiency of the input of the data. Also, inefficient processes with handling of information and operational design can often lead to incomplete batch records prior to product release, which then creates a nightmare for your quality manager, because then they have to run around and find all that information to ensure that they have completed the batch record before releasing the product. So there's a lot of, when you're designing your processes, not just from a production perspective, but also from a value stream map, from an information perspective of how you're capturing it, ensure it's being thought out in a way where you're minimizing the amount of inputs and you're maximizing the amount of outputs. And that provides you with complete batch records, the time of release, and you're not creating inefficiencies because of this poor process design. So some of the solutions to that challenge is reducing the paper or manual data entry, and you can reduce that with automated systems. Reducing double data entry, so with integrated systems. So again, not touching data twice, just touching it once, and maybe having it automatically get fed into your data system. Cross-training is also a very important element here too. So ensure that process is not dependent on one individual or person. And so that is important because someone might be sick one day. And if they're the only person that knows how to input this information or capture this information, that's putting your compliance at risk. So cross-training is another important element, that you ensure that one process is not dependent on one person completely. And if someone is sick or wins the lottery or whatever, they don't decide not to come into work, stuff can still move forward with your compliance. Also, visual management is an important element to consider here too. Visual management, understanding the KPIs real time within the organization, having tick charts for defects, having your work instructions and SOPs that are readily available, easily available on touch screens. So if there is uncertainty about how to follow through on a process, that information is easily accessible to the staff. This will help increase the quality, the input quality, while decreasing waiting time between stages and escalation of tasks as well too. So having some nice visual management cues and communication tools within the organization will also help reduce that challenge. Reporting and audits. So this is one of the big elements in auditor. What we'll take a look at is the reporting, the quality of the data. And so what you want to do is reduce the cost or the time to collect all this information. So if you are spending weeks getting ready for an audit by collecting all this information, ensuring everything's ready to go, you're clearly doing something wrong. because this is not only inefficient, but it is also prone to human error. Also, the training of protocols require faster implementation, causing errors and setbacks in production. So, if you're changing your training and your protocols, you want to be able to ensure that everyone who understands or is applicable to that protocol, whether it be an SOP or a workflow, that they are trained quickly on what needs to happen, what the changes are, so they are following the new process immediately and not following the old process still while the new process is being implemented. And furthermore, not having up-to-date KPIs for management review. So if your KPIs are not being quickly updated or automatically updated, then management are out of touch with key performance indicators and they're unable to act quickly to ensure that they're reconciling those issues. So to summarize this challenge, cost of time to collect information, qualitative and quantitative data can lead to human error. If you're not getting training activities out quickly for updated documents, for updated processes, updated SOPs, then you run the risk of employees still following existing protocols, which puts your production at risk. And then also not having up-to-date KPIs creates a blind spot for management to then take action when they're seeing a trend going out of spec or when they're seeing a trend in the quality data that needs to be reconciled immediately. Okay, so some of the solutions here to cover off those challenges is having a centralized document and training hub. So getting away from the old school training where everyone's in a classroom and someone's walking through the protocol and have everyone sign off on this. This is something where you might want to have a web-based centralized system where individuals can log in, review a video, review a training course, and then sign off on it immediately, and then have those records then sent to the manager, and the manager then understanding immediately who has been trained and who has not been trained on the new process. So cloud-based solutions will allow for this to become a lot easier for your organization to capture this information. The use of e-signatures are also very important because this also increases the speed of document approvals and sign-offs for these updated processes, but also ensures that it is the right people who are signing off on these documents and approval of the new processes. Having good documentation practices are also important. So what is a good documentation practice? This is something that's not commonly understood in the industry. A good documentation practice is having standardized approaches to how you document information. So if you're using a manual-based approach, how do you write your date codes? Is it month, day, year? Is it day, month, year? So something that is often confused and overlooked, but how do you actually write your date codes on your documents? What color of pen do you use? Does red mean bad? Does blue mean good? Or is it just black? Even the color of pens are important and the ink that you're using to write out your information if you're using a manual-based process. So ensuring that you have good documentation practices is very important. This also comes in the point of form design. So making the forms easy to input information and not asking someone to input doctoral thesis type of information and just tick box, yes, no, multiple choice, sign off. Make the information input easy so it's standardized and it's consistent and you're not having any uncertainties of the data that you are reviewing. So some ideas around good documentation practice and why that's important. And obviously that comes into standardizing how you input the data and also reducing the amount of data inputs in it. So if you have, going back to that one-piece flow, going back to that accessibility of data inputs and automating those data inputs, having that standardized and automated will also reduce risk and it will remove human error from that element. And then poke yoke. So what is poke yoke? Poke yoke is a manufacturing term that is used to ensure that essentially you are capturing all defects before they leave the facility. Now, you can utilize this type of protocol even with your documentation. So this is where it comes into, if you have a cloud solution that you could type in a batch number, for example, and it will tell you where you're short. So you know right away, automatically where you're short and what you need to work on to get that batch released. So having these types of systems in place to provide you with immediate response, immediate information is very important. And then finally, having an automated system that's going to drive analytics and reporting automatically, which then allows you to take preventative actions immediately, and you're not waiting for the KPIs to be updated on a spreadsheet that you're going to review at the end of the month. You know right away when something is bad and something is going out of spec, and you can take action immediately to reduce those risks and to eliminate that risk and to correct it right away. Okay, so coming to the conclusion of this presentation, so some of the key takeaways, obviously you want to partner with the right people to help you through the certification process, whether it be an internal employee who has gone through this process before in a previous life, whether it be a consultant or a IT toolkit that's going to help automate the process for you, but finding the right partners that meet your business's objectives. Certification starts out with a well thought out plan. This is not something you just jump into and go for certification next week. You need that well thought out plan. You need to do your gap analysis. You need to do your employee training, developing your SOPs, drive that knowledge throughout your organization, do your cross training, have your good documentation practices. And this is something that is going to take time. It's typically a 3 to 6 month period from the day you start to the day you get certified, depending on the certification scheme and those third-party requirements. The third-party audits also lead to more consumer confidence and reduces the risks for your consumers. Because you are being reviewed by a third party, it means that you're not hiding anything, and you've opened your facility and your books up for someone to come in and review to ensure that you're following set out rules. You must need management commitment. Without management commitment, nothing's gonna happen, because these processes and these certification schemes do require resources. It requires time, it requires investment, but that time and that investment that you put into your system will ROI, because you're going to reduce risks, you're going to reduce defects, and you're going to improve output, and you're going to have a better product. Train your staff. Your staff must be trained, and you just don't train them once. You just refresher training. So it's not something where you train them once and say, okay, good luck. It's a continual training process. And by doing so, you're going to continually communicate to your staff what's important, why they need to do it. And then with that, you're going to have consistent results with data and consistent results with production. Simplify your record keeping. This is very, if you have simple records, easy to follow, easy compliance, reduce risks. If you have an automated system, automated systems are audit friendly. Type in a number, type in a batch number, everything comes up, it's all there. It helps you get ready for your audits automatically. You're not trying to find stuff, you're not trying to walk around the facility, look for that piece of paper that's gone missing. It's all there in your data system. So simplify record keeping, automated data systems, very audit friendly. Auditors love data systems because it's easier for them to review. And the easier you make it for the auditor, the easier you're going to make it for you to achieve your certification. Finally, certification solidifies growth and legitimizes your organization while driving improvements and efficiency. So when you implement these types of processes, it not only demonstrates that you're committed to quality, but these types of quality processes, GMP and ISO, they mandate that you take action to improve your business. That is part of the compliance with these standards, is continual improvement. Okay, and that's just thank you. As mentioned, there's a link here with some 5S information that you can review on our website. Some upcoming shows for Isolocity will be at the Quality Show in Chicago, the SQF Show in New Orleans, and ICBC in Berlin early next year. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to any sort of questions that may have come up.
We've had some questions from the floor. So the first question is, how do you get buy-in from management to start the process?
Okay, great question. So a lot of buy-in from management, it's got to be ROI driven, right? So return on investment, right? So if you can demonstrate to your management team that achieving certification is going to improve sales or improve market access, well, that'd be one element. The second element, which is sometimes overlooked by management, is how is this actually going to create efficiencies within our business? So if you create these types of protocols in the business, you're going to have consistency in your production. You're going to have consistency and standardization in your workforce. And when you have those standardized processes in place, you can then achieve further efficiencies with load balancing your resources, and maybe perhaps you're over-resourced, and then the consistency and the standardization allows you to have that universal approach to production. So ROI from a market expansion process and from a market penetration and sales, but also ROI on efficiencies and improvement within your operation. And I feel that those two elements are very important to getting management buy-in.
Okay. Another question is timescales for application to audit?
Yeah. Well, it all depends. It all depends. It's if you're working with the regulatory bodies, sometimes being audited can take up to a year. If you're working with a third-party GMP certification registrar or ISO registrar, you could be audited within 3 months.
Okay, and final question. How large is your average customer in the CBD and cannabis industry?
Our average customers at Isolocity in these industries, it's really hard to say because we have a bunch of customers who are around 10 employees. We have a bunch of customers that are around 30 employees. We have a bunch of customers that are around 100 employees. We have a bunch of customers who are over 300 employees. So it's hard to say our average size of customer within this industry because it seems like we have a pretty even smattering across from craft to large scale producers within this industry using Isolocity for this reason. So if I were to I would just say 50 to 60 employees, but the system works for the small guys and it works for the big guys.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. Chris, thank you so much for doing this webinar. As ever, a pleasure to speak to you. And if anybody wants to contact you, how do they do so?
Well, the contact information is up on the screen. An email works best, and we can connect that way. Or you could just come onto our website, isolocity.com, and submit a button that says you want to talk to us, and we can talk to you that way too. So hopefully we make it easy enough for everyone to get a hold of us. And thank you everyone again for your time today. And thank you for staying with us. And thank you for listening.
I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Christopher Budd from Isolocity for his invaluable insights and expertise, and has been immensely beneficial to all of us in the UK legal cannabis industry. I would like to thank each of you for joining us too. We hope that today's discussion has provided you with new perspectives and practical knowledge to apply in your business. This is just one of many webinars we have planned. Our commitment to education and collaboration within the industry continues, and we look forward to bringing you more engaging and informative sessions in the future. So please keep an eye on our website, emails, and social media for announcements regarding upcoming webinars. We encourage you to join us again to further enrich your understanding and to network with fellow professionals. Goodbye for now. Stay safe.